For today, we are going to discuss about a concept called as charges or charge codes. So anybody got any idea what are charges and what is the significance of charges in business? So what kind of charges generally we incur during the procurement process or during while we buy goods? Fine, let me ask you in this way. Suppose if you are buying goods from Flipkart or Amazon, so you are ordering some goods. So other than the goods price, what are the additional charges that Flipkart or Amazon will levy on this particular order? Okay, delivery charges. So most of the case it will be delivery charges or transport charges, right? And what else we have? Sometimes you have service charges. Sometimes you have packing charges if they are packing the goods properly, or maybe that goods needs to be treated specially with a good package, good packing. So that would be packing charges. Sometimes carrier charges, labor charges if at all there is any labor involved in it for carrying it, or I mean for uploading on loading it or unloading it, or uh, loading it down. So there can be different charges. There can be insurance charges in between in case if they are the goods are perishable, or if there is a chance of damage in the transit, you can insure the goods, so that will also cover. Else there could be many other types of charges, depends on the business or the item that you are going to buy, and sometimes depends on the vendor what is going to charge. You will anyway agree with the vendor initially itself what kind of charges may it include. So while you place the order in Amazon or Flipkart, it will clearly show you how much the delivery charges that they are going to charge, or what kind of other charges if they have any. It will clearly show you the breakup of the order. So in the same way, you will also have an agreement with the vendor what kind of charges is going to charge on you. So these kind of charges will be common in business, and recording these charges especially on the orders and separately on the orders is also most common. Then we also have different types of, I mean, accounting of these charges is different in there are different types of accountings for these charges actually in business. So some charges you can directly add on to the inventory. Suppose if I am buying an iPhone for suppose $1,000, so there is a delivery charge of 10. I want to add it onto the inventory and show my item price itself as 1010. So I can do that, or I can separately account it like it's a normal delivery expense. I can record it into a delivery expense account. So how these expenses are handled, what are the different ways or the options that Dynamics provides to handle these charges, we are going to learn. First, let us see how charges are accounted. Then we'll go into the configuration part, trying to apply the same logic that we understand how the charges will work. So let's say there are, let me take it completely down. There are two types of charges. Charges added onto the inventory, charges not added onto the inventory. That means I can say charges added to the inventory, charges not added to the inventory, and which are accounted as expense. So what is charges added onto the inventory, charges not added onto the inventory? And within this, we also have two subcategories to say, one of which is paid to vendor, paid to third party. Here also we have the same, and under this paid to vendor and paid to third party. Charges that are added onto the inventory and paid to the vendor. Charges that are added onto the inventory but paid to a third party. So here it is like charges that are not added onto the inventory and paid to a vendor. Charges that are not added onto the inventory and paid to a third party. So totally four types of charges, or the flexibility of accounting the charges is provided by Dynamics. So let's see each of them, how each of them will work. So I'll call it as A and I'll call it as B, suppose. So let's talk about A1, charges added onto the inventory but paid to the vendor. So how it would look like. So A1, okay. Sorry. Come on. Okay. Charges added onto the inventory and paid to vendor. Suppose I have an invoice, let's say, I'll take it down. So if at all I am doing an invoice or a purchase order invoice, so what will be the actual entry for that purchase order invoice? The final entry of the purchase order invoice, anyone? What happens to the accounts payable account? My accounts payable account is not debited. It's a liability account. It is always credited. And inventory account is debited since we receive inventory. It's a simple understanding. Always whatever you receive will be debited and whatever you have to pay will be credited. So inventory account will be debited and accounts payable account will be credited. Let's say suppose the invoice is for $1,000 and $1,000. And now there is a charge of here $100, let's say. So this is something like some delivery charge, let's assume. So you wanted to maintain it or add it onto the inventory. Okay, in case if you want to add it onto the inventory, it will be the same entry, like inventory will be added with another 1,000, sorry, another 100, and accounts payable account will be added with another 100 since you are paying it to the vendor. See here, charges are added to the inventory and paid to the vendor. So you are paying the charges to the same vendor who is delivering you the goods. So there is no need of separate entry for charges here. So in your inventory normally will be debited with 1,000, as well as that additional charge, since you wanted to add it onto the inventory, will be added to the inventory directly as 100. So totally it will be 1,100. And coming to the accounts payable, you are liable to pay the vendor 1,000 rupees against the original invoice amount or the for the original goods, as well as this 100 charges also you are liable to pay to the same vendor. So it will be added to the same account. So inventory account will be debited with 1,000 and 100, I mean 1,100, and accounts payable account will be created with the same amount of 1,100. So this is one kind of charge or applicability of charge or accounting of a charge, which would be added onto the inventory and paid to the vendor himself, whoever is delivering you the goods. The other side, then let us discuss about point A.2. Charges added onto the inventory but paid to a third party. So you're not paying it to the vendor actually. Let's see what it is. A.2, let's say. So who is a third party? Could be someone else. Let me take you an example. Suppose you are buying goods from a vendor for $1,000. From a vendor, you are buying some goods for $1,000, but vendor is not going to deliver you the goods. So you have to book a private delivery, or you have to send your own vehicle or somebody's vehicle to take that goods from the vendor actually. So vendor told clearly that I can sell you the goods, but I'm not going to deliver the goods. If you can send some vehicle from your side, we can shift the goods into the vehicle and you can take them. So that's what he mentioned. So in that case, vendor is not incurring any charges or not collecting any charges from you. Since you are only going to receive the goods from the vendor directly, you will send some third party person. You will call one of the transport company and say that see, I need some goods that has to be brought from some place to this place. So can you please go and pick up those goods and deliver here? You can tell me your charges. So he will tell the charges. Suppose he says that again $100 we'll charge $100 for picking the goods and delivering you. So you say okay. So so then what happens? You will pay that amount to the so and so transport company, whoever helped you in delivering the goods, not to the vendor. So in that case, how the charges will be maintained or how the charges are accounted, we'll show you now. So clear with the example, right, all of you? And in this example also, you will add the charges onto the inventory itself. You want to maintain or add that additional amount onto your uh, cost price of the goods only directly. So in that case, what happens is inventory account will be debited with 1000, as well as since you wanted to add the charges onto the inventory directly, inventory account will be added with another 100 as well. Then accounts payable account will be credited with how much, guys? Accounts payable
1000.
since
1000.
you, yeah, since you have to pay to the vendor only 1000, you will credit it with 1000, but you have to pay it to the transport company another $100. So in order to balance the voucher, that account will come into picture. You can say payable account will be credited for 100. Payable is also a liability account, since if it is an accounts payable account or if it's a third party payable account, both are liability accounts. But here you are accounting it separately. 1000 that you have to pay on the original goods, you are accounting for the vendor, the original vendor who is delivering the goods, and the 100 delivery charges or the transport charges you are booking as a liability for the third party vendor or a third party payable account. So that's how this accounting is done in this kind of charge code, where charges are added onto the inventory but paid to a third party. So this is clear, right? Charges that are not added onto the inventory but paid to the vendor, and charges are not added onto the inventory but paid to third party. Let's see these two examples as well. First, let's see the B1. Charges not added onto the inventory but paid to the same vendor. So I'll write it down here. Point 1. Charges not added onto the inventory to vendor directly. In this case, so since we are not adding charges onto the inventory, what will be the invoice entry, guys? Inventory will be debited with how much amount? Debited with 1000. Okay. Then so let's say accounts payable account will be credited with how much amount?
1000 rupees.
We have charges of 100, let's say, suppose.
Okay.
They is saying 1000. Okay. Then what about the charge? How charges will be accounted? Any idea?
900.
No, it's not 900. Original amount of goods is 1000.
Okay.
Charges is extra 100. So how charges are accounted? So this is a case where charges are not added onto the inventory but paid to the same vendor. Then inventory account will be debited with 1000 only, but charges are accounted to a separate expense account. Let's say
That's it.
transport
Transport.
charges, or we can call it as transport expenses. It's an expense account. Expenses are always debited. So expense account will be debited with 100. Since you have to pay that expense amount to the same vendor, right? So a vendor will be created with 1100. So now you can see there is a debit of 1100 and credit of 1100. So this is the type of charges which are not added onto the inventory. So they are maintained separately as transport expenses, and accounts payable will be credited with 1100. So if you want to add them onto the inventory, you can follow this method or process. If you want to separately account them, not adding onto the inventory, you can debit it separately into an expense account and then credit the accounts payable account like this. I mean, if at all you have to pay to the same vendor. That's all. It will not increase you the inventory cost. Inventory cost will stay as is, but the expenses that you incur are accounted separately into an expense account, which is recorded in the profit and loss account. They are not capitalized. Expenses are not capitalized in this case, but here expenses are capitalized. I mean, it is recorded as an asset, right? Inventory will be an asset. So it would affect the balance sheet, but here it is affecting the profit and loss account. So clear this for all of you. So then let's go for the final one, B2. Charges not added to inventory paid to third party. So any guess, anyone, what will be the accounting entry here? No, inventory expense is 1000. Okay. Then third party payable is credited with 100. Okay. Then voucher is not balanced yet.
Yes.
Yeah, any other guess? Transport expenses will be debited with 100. Okay. Payable is credited with 1000. Here the invoice or the amount will be 1000 only. You have to pay the vendor whoever sell you the goods. So you have to pay him only 1000 on the original value of the goods. But the transport, you have incurred it from a third party transport charges, and you are not willing to add it onto the inventory. So you will maintain it separately as an expense and book the liability to a third party vendor or a third party payable account. So you can later settle it by paying cash to this particular third party payable account. So generally we will settle it by debiting the accounts payable account and crediting the cash account, right? Or creating the bank account. Here also you will debit this third party payable account and credit the bank account or cash account to pay the expenses. So the liability will be cancelled at that time once you settle it. So in the same way. So these are the four types of charges we have in business. So other than these four, there is no scope for another new kind of charges too. If there is any, Dynamics even have that flexibility to maintain such charges. So to achieve this kind of charges, which charge have to added onto the inventory, which charge has to be credited to the same vendor or credited to a third party payable account. So we have to configure the charge codes in such a way that the accounting will be done in this manner, whatever the manner that you have understood here. So if these four examples are clear for you, let's go and create some four different charge codes which will account differently, and we will try to create some purchase orders and apply those charge codes on the same purchase orders and see how the charges are being accounted. Okay, is it clear for all of you? I mean, all these four examples. This is clear. Yeah, we can proceed with the configuration of charge codes. Fine, then let's go ahead and configure the charge codes. So charge codes are, just change the company in a while. DL. Yeah. For configuration of charge codes, I'm going to accounts payable. Here have the option of charge code. You can see here, right? Charge codes. Click on charge code. So I'll show it to you again. It's an accounts payable. Charges setup, charge code, three-step navigation. Last but one menu in the accounts payable, charges setup and charges code. So here click on the charges code and you will arrive at this page. It's an empty form. You don't have any configured here yet in our legal entity line. So we're gonna configure now. So let's say I'll click here on new. Let us configure the first charge group like A1, charges added onto the inventory paid to the same vendor, whoever is sending you the goods or selling you the goods. So I'll call it as a packing charge. Suppose packing charges are added onto my inventory. Okay. I'll just call it as packing. Write it here as packing charges. So then I'll come back to this point of item sales tax group and maximum amount. The one that you have to concentrate more is this one. What should be the debit and what should be the credit in the charge whenever this charge is applied. Since this charge has to be added onto the inventory and paid to the same vendor, the same accounts payable account. So we can select it here as item. So we can select an item or ledger account or customer or vendor. Here, since it has to be added onto the item in the sense inventory. So item can be debited. So it has to be credited to the vendor or customer, right? So it is vendor in this situation since it's a accounts payable charge. So it will be considered the vendor, same vendor, whoever is with whomever we are creating the purchase order with. So now I can save this code. So this indicates debit is taken as item, credit is taken as vendor, means charges is adding on to the inventory and crediting the same vendor from whom you are buying the goods. That's how we can configure the A1 charge code. So if there are multiple charges of the same nature or the charges that has to be accounted in the same way, you can create many names as so like transport charges, freight charges, so and so, and give the same, debiting the item and crediting the vendor, customer or vendor in the sense it will take the vendor only since it's on the accounts payable side. So that's how this inventory charges or the charges that are adding on to the inventory and paid to the vendor are configured. So clear for everyone? Any confusion in this?
Good to go, Jay.
Okay. Then if there is any other sales taxes applicable on the charges separately, not on the items. On items, sales taxes will be separate. On charges also you will have service taxes sometimes. So that can also be added here, the item sales tax group in case. So this tax configurations we'll further see in another module of tax, which we would discuss later. But you can also add charges that gives that feasibility of adding charges here in the charge code. I mean taxes in the charge code itself. You can also give the maximum amount of charge you can add. Suppose if I say 1000, all the time I'm using this charge code, I should use a maximum amount of 1000 only. I can't go beyond it. Anything less than 1000 I can add it, or up to 1000 I can add it. Anything more than 1000 it will not accept because packing charges cannot exceed more than 1000. That's what you are indicating to the system. It can be any order. Packing charges should not exceed. If you don't want any such limits, you can remove that limit here. Or if sometimes if it is exceeding, you can come back, remove that limit and then apply the charge code. So that's how. So this posting type and account are not applicable in this example. We'll see it in the next example, how it will work. So this is how the charges that are added onto the inventory. Packing charges, you can also give a small description, inventory add-on. Packing charges which are added onto the inventory. Then I'll create one more. So freight party. So I want to assign this to a third party. It's a A2 example. It doesn't mean that freight should be always from third party. You can configure any code in any manner. Okay, just for the sake of example or explaining here, I am just creating different names and giving different view here. So freight, that is paid to the third party but added onto the inventory itself. Let's say suppose example number A2, which is added to the inventory but paid to another third party company or a third party payable account, but not to the same vendor that we are buying the goods from. So in that case, you can select the debit as item itself since you want to add it onto the inventory. But the credit you won't select as vendor because you're not going to pay it to the same vendor. You are going to pay it to some third party payable account, or you are going to book a liability to a third party payable account. So you have to select the type as ledger account only here, and you have to give an account here. You have to give some payable account here in the credit. So for that, I'll create one account quickly. It's a liability account, right? I'll just add it on here, like 50,000. Third party charges payable. It's a liability account. I'll save it. Wait, go back and give the account here. Third party payable. You have to fill this field actually, credit posting. You can fill this one with anything, no problem. Yeah, clicking on F, it will take you to freight somewhere. It's not taking you to the freight. Order cash, order freight. Yeah, can give some posting type here. It's not mandatory that you have to give the same posting type. You can select any, but something relevant to the posting. So it's order freight. Since it's a freight, I have selected this order freight directly. So this is how you are debiting the charge onto the item itself directly onto the inventory, but crediting it to a third party payable account, not to the same account's payable account. So you can see I have given here a third party payable account. So third party charges payable account I have given here, which is also a liability account. So this is the example for A2. This one here, which is adding to the inventory, but paid to a third party payable account. So invoice entry will be like this almost. So we'll see that how that entries will appear once we post the invoices applying these charge codes. Then this one B1, which is not adding onto the inventory but paid to the same vendor. So in this case, how we have to configure the code, let's see. So I'll call it as B1 here, suppose. Or I'll just give it as something. Um, transport expenses. Okay, these are paid to the vendor himself directly. So here what I can do is I can give the ledger account. So here I am not debiting it onto the inventory, as we all know that the charges are not added onto the inventory but paid to a vendor. So charges not adding to the inventory means you don't consider here as item because you don't want it to be added onto the item or not added as a not accounted as a inventory. So you will select the ledger account and you will select the account here as transport charges if you have. So you have something like travel expenses. Travel expenses is not as transport charges. I'll create one main account as transport charges. Transport expenses trade I have given an account. It's an expense account. I'll save it. So it's created. Can go back and give that account here. And then I can give a posting type here as well. Do I have this transport charges? Don't have transport charges. I can give the same actually, order freight. No problem, it's okay. Then here you can select another account. I mean, in the credit you have to do it to the same vendor, right? So you can select the vendor. So this is where you are booking the charges onto an expense account, not onto the inventory, but you are liable to pay to the same vendor from whom you are buying the goods. So that's the B1 concept, this one. Inventory will be debited with only 1,000. Transport charges are maintained separately under transport expenses, but paid to the same accounts payable account, or total amount is paid to the same vendor from whom you are buying the goods. In that case, your debit will be given as an expense account like here, and the credit will be the same vendor account, so that the amount that you have to pay on the charges is also liable to be paid to the vendor himself. So this is one, and I'll create the last one, which is B2. I'll call it as insurance. Insurance expenses, third party. Okay, we'll give that accounts actually. So this is an example where my debit has to be booked into an expense account only, not into the inventory, and credit has to be booked onto a third party vendor account, not onto the you can say the like third party vendor account, not to the same vendor. It's to a third party payable account. In that case, I can select debit account and I can say insurance expense as the debit account here, not adding on to the inventory, but selected an expense account. Credit will be a same ledger account here as well. So it will be the third party payable account that we have created. You can select that one account, third party payable account. So nowhere item or vendor is in picture here. So the charges are maintained separately. Can give posting as well here, like order freight, order cash, or what kind of thing we can. Let's see, let me duplicate this tab and take you to USMF. Let's see what kind of order types, posting type they have given. Insurance we have here, purchase fee they gave here as a so order freight. I'll give purchase fee, something like purchase expenditure, cash purchase, right, purchase fee. Suppose here I'll give order cash, order freight, something like that. Okay, can be anything. So this is for a particular type of expense which you suppose, let's say like you are buying some goods from the vendor. So there are some delicate goods and there can be chances that there can be damage of the goods. So you want to insure the goods by the time the goods are delivered to you from. So you have to insure the goods for that 1 week of transit. Suppose if the goods are being sent from somewhere from Europe to India, so they would come through shipment through a sailing ship over the overseas. So what happens? So there can be chance that ship gets damaged and sinked in the sea. So you might lose your trade or goods that you are that are being brought in the ship. So for that thing, you will insure the goods with some amount with the insurance company. In case if there is a damage, you can claim the insurance from the insurance company. Or if the goods are lost in transit, you can claim insurance from the insurance company. So for that, you have to pay the insurance premium. So that will be accounted in this way. So, ledger account, the insurance expense account will be debited and you are creating a third party payable account, or you can also give the insurance payable account here so that you can you can create that account, insurance payable, and later you can pay the insurance premium to the company, or you can pay it early as an advance payment as well to the insurance company. So that's how where you don't add charges onto the inventory and pay it to a third party company or third party payable account rather than booking it onto the accounts payable account. So as a finance functional consultant, you should understand the different types of charge codes, and then if at all they come up with a question, how we have to book these kind of charges and all, you can explain them or demonstrate them how the charge codes work in the dynamics and how you can configure them. Now, I see these 4 charge codes are created only for examples. So there can be the same charge codes, but they want it to be accounted separately. Other than these 4, they don't have any other scenarios mostly in business. So if they want the same charge codes to be accounted separately, you can give debit and credit as according to their requirement. So all that you have to understand is the logic of will be how this will be accounted and how this will be configured. So how it will be accounted, we have understood. How it is configured, we have understood. Now what we have to understand further is how to apply the charge codes on the purchase orders and how the vouchers are being posted. Are they being posted according to the explanation that I have given earlier or not? So let's see that how it will work. Okay, so I'll take you to again to the Reliance company to create some purchase orders and apply the charge codes that we have created. So let's go to accounts payable, all purchase orders. It will take a while to load. So before it load, I'll tell you a small scenario. What happens is, so you can apply charges on a purchase order in two levels. One is at header level charges and line level charges. So line level charges are specific to the item. Suppose if there are 4 lines in the purchase order, where you are buying 4 different kinds of items. So for each line, you can give a specific charge code. So there can be differences, right? So one item might need packing, another item might not need packing. So there won't be packing charge on one item, but there will be a specific packing charge on one specific item. So for that particular line in the purchase order, you can give charge. Also, you can give some header level charges as well. Suppose if in case, let's say transport charges. So vendor is delivering all the goods at a time in the transport. Okay. So you want to record the transport charges upon all the items at a time. Means at the header level, you can record transport charges. They are not specific to any item, but it's a charge on the total fulfillment of the order or delivery of the order to goods, all the goods. So that will be recorded at the header level. So charges that are specific to the items are recorded at the line level in the charges. So we can apply charges in the two areas in purchase order. So let's see how where we can apply those charges in the purchase order. For that, I'm going to create a new purchase order. So go to vendor account, select Tata company, any vendor you can select actually. So I'll go to warehouse. Then the purchase order type is purchase order. I'll click on OK. So you can select one item here. Let's say what item it is. Let me say this cricket ball. Okay. Suppose it's of one, you are buying 100 quantity, 100 each, and total amount is something like 10,000. 100 into 100, 10,000 amount. Okay, you can apply charges at two levels, as I said, at line level as well as at the header level. Let's say suppose this for delivering this cricket balls, vendor for this 100 cricket balls, actually vendor is making some packing, or he's packing it in some good cardboards for which he's incurring some charges, and he want to levy that charges on you as packing charges. So that packing charges, so we also configure that packing charges here, which is added onto the inventory actually and paid to the same vendor directly. So these packing charges we can apply into the line level. So here in the line level, in the financials, we have the option called as maintain charges. The line level financials maintain charges. Here you can apply, or here, sorry, in the purchase, here also you have maintain charges. This is at the header level. So two areas you have. At the header level you have maintain charges option. At the line level also you have maintain charges option. So that would be specific to this line if you apply it here, and it would be for the entire order if you apply it here in this area. So for now, for line I'm applying for this single item. I'm going to this line, cricket ball, select this line, go to financials. Go to maintain charges. So then you can select the charge code which you want to apply. See, there are 4 charge codes that we have created which are available here. Let us select this packing charges. So the description is packing charges inventory add-on. One second. So then I have category as fixed. Then charges value. How much value you want to add as a charge? Let's say suppose $100 as a charge, or you can say $150 charge. This one. Then US dollar only, right? So there is no difference in currency and it's $150 only. If there is any taxes applicable, you can apply the taxes here. So either it is a fixed charge or charge as per single piece in case if the item is counted in pieces, or you can apply percentage amount of tax like charge like 10% charge on the or purchase order line. So 10% charge means at some 10,000 it will be like almost 1,000 will be calculated as a charge, but we don't want charge to be calculated in percentage. I want it to be calculated as fixed charge. So most of the cases they will use it as a fixed charge. I can save it now. So 150 charge is added to the line. So there is a inventory amount of 10,000. Sorry, not inventory amount. I mean the item amount of 10,000 as well as charge of 150. So we can also check that totals here, purchase order totals in this area. You can clearly identify what is the amount of the order now. So you can see subtotal amount is 10,000 as well as charges of 150 is added here. Total amount is 10,150. You can see 10,150 is the total amount. So other than that, suppose if I want to add one more line here, let's say add line. I'm buying another product from the same. I'm buying some cycle from this vendor. So how many cycles I'm buying? I'm buying 10 cycles. 10 into 1000, 10,000 again, or I will say like I'm buying 20 cycles. 20 into 1000, 20,000 total amount of this line. Okay, but this cycles doesn't need any packing. They come by default packing. Vendor is not charging any packing charges on this cycle, but he is charging some transport charges, if I can say. So transport charges in the sense this one. Transport charges which are not being added onto the inventory but paid to the same vendor. Vendor himself is delivering the goods with his own vehicle, so he is charging some transport charges. But the transport charges are you don't want to add them onto the inventory. You don't want to add them onto the inventory. You want to add them on the I mean account it as a separate expense. So you can add another charge code also at the header level. So one charge code is applied for a single line. You can also add another charge code at the header level. Click on maintain charges. Here you can add one more charge as transport expenses. So you can say amount of something like $200 is the transport charges. And you can save it. So that's okay. Vendor code is not authorized for cycle that it is saying. Well, that's okay. That's a normal warning message. But now we have two charge codes applied on this order. If you want to see the total amount of order now, you can see here. Total subtotal amount is 30,000. 10,000 for cricket balls and 20,000 for cycles. Total of 30,000. Then you have charges of 350. 150 of packing charges for cricket ball. Then 200 of transport charges for the entire order for delivering both the goods, for transporting both the goods to your place. Vendor is charging another 200. Total of 350 is added here on the order. Okay, that's off. You can add charge codes, I mean charges to the purchase order. Now you can proceed with the next process of confirming, receiving, and invoicing the order. Only at the time of invoicing you will see the accounting effects of the uh, charges. So we'll show you how it will affect. So in this case, what should be the assumed entry? Inventory any idea what should be the amounts upon the inventory? So inventory, for inventory I have total 10,000 plus 20,000, 30,000 plus what will be added onto the inventory? So for now I can say it is 30,000 here plus the packing charges we have applied on this, because that packing charges are being added onto the inventory, so that 150 will be added onto the inventory. And accounts payable, I mean, coming to the transport expenses, it will be debited here. It is also debited here. So transport expenses is debited for 200, since this is a code which is not added onto the inventory. And accounts payable is created with the total amount 30,000 plus 150 plus 200, 30,000 350. This will be the accounts payable account credit, because of all both the codes you are paying to the same vendor, both the charges you are not paying to any third party. So accounts payable only will be created with the total amount, but onto the inventory only 150 is added, only the packing charges are added for that item. Coming to transport expenses, they are accounted into a separate expense account, right? So they are not added onto the inventory, so debiting another expense account here. Two charge codes are played at a time, so this should be the invoice entry for me. So let's see what will be the invoice entry we would arrive at. Now we can receive the goods, post a product receipt for the same, since the order is confirmed. Post a something, you can give some number, GR native or something, and see that both the goods are being delivered. Yeah, okay. So here it is. The order is now received. So when you post a product receipt, let's see the voucher what it will be. So at product receipt, normally you don't have any charges being affected. You will have the product receipt for the exact amount of the order. So it's 30,000 and 30,000. The exact amount of the actual purchase order line inventory subtotal amounts. So 10,000 for cycles and 20,000, so 10,000 for cricket balls and 20,000 for cycles is totally 30,000. Charges are not accounted at the time of product receipt, but charges are accounted at the time you receive the invoice actually. So that's how. Here you can see accrued purchases is created with 30,000 and inventory received is debited with 30,000, or cost of material received with 30,000. Then you can invoice the order by clicking on invoice and click on generate invoice. So Dynamics provides a feasibility to apply the charge codes on the invoice level as well. Suppose if you miss to apply charges at the purchase order level, our vendor did not inform you that there are charges on this order when you created a purchase order, but later he have added some charges in the invoice. You can add the charges on the invoice level also. There is a feasibility, or if If you want to make some correction of the charges, suppose if the packing charges are 150 right earlier, if vendor charged 160, you can correct the transport charges also to the next to a different amount, or if vendor increases or decreases charges. Let's see how we can do that. So I'm just giving this invoice number, something like 85, and invoice date as some today's date to tomorrow's date. So you have two lines here, cricket ball. This one, found this, we have packing charges right already 150. You can go here, maintain charges again, financials and maintain charges in the invoice line. Here it is 150 right? If you want to change it to 160, you can change it. If you want to remove it, you can remove it. If you want to add new code, you can add it. Or if you forgot to add it in the purchase order level, you can add it here in this level, in the invoice level. There is no problem. You always have that feasibility of adding or correcting the charges in the invoice level also. Since the proper accounting is done at the invoice level only, charges are designated to be accounted at the invoice level, or most of them want to account the charges at the invoice level only. They can make necessary corrections and then post the charges into the various accounts that they want, or add it into the inventory if they want to. So that's the chance you have. And also on the header level, you can correct the same actually. So where is this? This should be again under financials here, maintain charges. In the header level also you can see, in the header level we have a charge rate, $200 charge. You can see this one. So that can be applied to, that can be altered to, or you can add another new charge to at the header level if you want to. So I have corrected this charge code from 150 to 160 for this packing charges of the cricket ball. Let's see how it will be accounted. Then I'm going to click on update my status. So it is passed. Then I can post this invoice. So now it is 160, right? So I'll just correct it as 160. Here 3,360. So this should be my voucher that I'm looking for. Let's see. Here it is. Go to invoice. Go to the invoice journal which was posted. Now this order is invoiced as we need. Invoiced. And you can go to voucher. So the one that you see 30,000 and 30,000 here is the reversal of the product receipt voucher. Accrued purchase is debited and inventory received account is credited. So ignore this one. Other than this, you have three lines as you can see here. Inventory invoiced account is debited with 30,160. Inventory account or inventory invoiced account is debited with 30,160, which we are looking for 30,160. And accounts payable account is created with 30,360. So that difference of 200 is debited as a transport expenses. Transport expenses trade is debited with 20,000 as you can see. So one, this is the one debited and this is the one debited. First two lines, 30,160 plus 200, 30,360 is the total amount, and that is credited to the accounts payable account, or you are now liable to pay to the vendor 30,360, out of which 30,000 is a original subtotal amount of the goods and 360 are the different charges that are applied, packing charge plus transport charge, on which 200 you have accounted into a separate expense account, but the 160 rupees of packing charges you have added onto the inventory directly. So that is being accounted to the inventory. So that's how the entry is. You can see, follow this one in case if you want to. So the same entry is there. It's not obvious that you only have one charge code. You can have multiple charge codes on the orders, or you can also have one charge code at a time. There can be any chance. So I just gave you an example where you have multiple charges at the same time. So if this is clear, let's see one more order. So this is now invoiced and everything is accounted properly. Now while I have to pay the invoice, see the invoice amount is 3,360. I have to pay it. So I think we have passed the time. That's okay. We'll discuss the remaining charges tomorrow, or the remaining scenarios of charges as well as the automatic charges examples tomorrow, and see how it will work. For now, this would be all.